Hello everyone, it's Zach. For this video, let us talk about the tank rankings in Shadowlands. In this video, I'll be talking about the specific changes for each spec, explaining in terms of useful utilities with regards to the problems as well. Since I did some digging for a few informations, we are going to talk about legendaries and covenants abilities. However, to all my fellow friends, this explanation on each spec is just a roughly overview rather than a full guide like rotation, talent, priority stats, whereby this shall be explained in other videos with proper explanation on each spec. The general idea for this video is just to give you some thoughts on what do we expect when Shadowlands hits towards those tanks spec. As a disclaimer guys, please be reminded that the contents of this video is still in beta and we are expecting more to change as some classes have clunky playstyle. In the end of this video, I'm gonna divide the group of tanks which is based on my findings and discussion with fellow friends who's spending a lot of time in beta. As usual guys, to ask for your utmost favor, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more future contents, and remember to ring the bell. Let us begin. Let's have a look for Protection Warrior. Class spells like Challenging Shout, Execute, Hamstring, Ignore Pain, Intervene, Shield Block, Shield Slam, Spell Reflection, and Whirlwind were being put up as baseline abilities which can be used by every spec of warriors. These new baseline abilities are somewhat useful for other specs of warrior. However, when it comes to protection, using this spell like Whirlwind in your rotation isn't really worth at all and having no interaction with the talent tree. It is pretty much just the new additional button for you to press. Plus, since the Azerite essences and corruption are gone, especially the absence of Vision of Perfection and Memory of Lucid Dreams, it feels that the spec is really bad and all other classes will feel the same slower due to this reset. However, Prot Warrior mostly suffers from the loss of those two things. Sadly to see for this spec that there are a lot of nerf, like Into the Fray is being nerfed for its haste gain is reduced from 3% to 2% for each enemy or ally. Demoralizing Shout reduces the damage dealt by enemies 10% now and it used to be 20%. Furthermore, Thunderclap damage is reduced from 50 to 42% of attack power and deals less damage beyond 5 targets. After these changes, other than spell reflection, Prot Warrior seriously have lacks of defensives. Shield Block is not enough and cannot be used as spammable due to this lower rage regeneration. When we look into Shadowlands, dungeons have less blockable damage and more to magic damage, which puts this spec in a very tough situation. Additionally, damage output of Warrior is quite low in comparison to other tank spec, but this can be tuned later on after having better gears. Utility-wise, Warriors have raid-wide attack power buff. They can AoE disorient the enemies and as well AoE stun. For Covenant abilities, in my opinion, Kyrian ability is the best option, but its damage have been nerfed by 45% and the Necrolord ability is being reworked. I think this one provides the most value as it is both offensive and a defensive cooldown. Let's look into the legendary, and my suggestion is to pick Misthaven Mirror for raid scenarios for its spell reflection to all raid members sounds really powerful. Thunderlord Mythic Plus seems to be the best of all for having that damage reduction from Demoralizing Shout is more often. For Blood Death Knights, there are quite a bit of changes coming into Shadowlands. First of all, I want to mention is the new runes. There are 5 new runes for all Death Knight specs and they all look pretty good and can be used in a variety of situations. Anti-Magic Zone is coming back, which is really perfect. In addition, Lichborn is another new baseline spell for Death Knights which increases your Lich and makes you immune to Charm, Fear and Sleep effects for 10 seconds. Anti-Magic Zone is going to be really good for both in Raid and Mythic Plus as 20% damage mitigation is pretty strong. Rune Tap is now baseline and it's off the GCD, which means that now you have 20% mitigation before you build up the Bone Shield. Utility-wise, Blood Death Knights are top-notch. First of all, they have Combat Rest and also now they have Anti-Magic Zone, which is just amazing. In addition, they have Moss Grip Stun and Slow abilities. When it comes to Covenants, I think one of them is coming ahead, and that is the Knight's Fate Death Dew for 15% damage reduction is really strong. It deals damage at the same time it empowers you, which is pretty solid. However, in my opinion, Knight's Fate as a Covenant doesn't really match with the brutality of Death Knights. Knight's Fate is all about nature and stuff, which Death Knights are, Death Knights, more manning kind of things. Maybe it's just my thoughts or something, but yeah, the ability is pretty damn good. My legendary pick for Blood is Brinder Might, since it will increase your sustainability a lot. However, Vampiric Aura also seems pretty good and kinda useful in endgame content. With the Anti-Magic Zone, you will have an amazing mitigation for Raid and your party, but right now Brander's feels better for me overall in my opinion. Generally for me, Blood Decay seems to be a solid pick in Shadowlands. There is not much change for the playstyle, however, all the new additions to this pack makes it stronger. With the new runes, you will have more flexibility for different scenarios as well. However, the off-GCD cooldowns and rune management is now a lot more important than before and might be hard to manage. Next, let's have a look at Guardian Druid. The spells like Ferocious Bites, Bark Skin, Cyclone, Stampeding Roar, and Iron Fur are now baseline for all Druid specs. Bark Skin is now off the GCD and the cooldown is reduced to 1 minute from 1.5 minutes. Together with Berserk is back, which is a great addition for reducing cooldowns and cost of the Iron Fur. Let us talk about the changes of cooldown for Survival Instinct, which is being reduced to 3 minutes from 4 minutes. Plus Renewal returns, which provides a big chunk of healing when required. However, there is not much change in terms of general rotation of the Guardian Druid, which some of people find quite boring. From utility-wise, Druids are pretty good as they have a combat rest, variety of crowd control abilities, and they have a raid-wide mobility cooldown called Stampeding Roar. When it comes to Covenant's abilities, Adaptive Swarm seems to be pretty good, especially in raid in my opinion, since it's both defensive and offensive type. The Ravenous Frenzy is really good, especially if you combine it with a specific legendary called Legacy of the Sleeper. In addition to its effects in Berserk, it also makes you immune to loss of control effects, which synergies pretty well with Ravenous Frenzy, and also I think Natural Orders will be the best defensive legendary, especially if you pick the Survival of the Fittest, which reduces the cooldown of Iron Fur by 33%. The downside of this spec on beta right now is to hold aggro, especially on AoE pulls. If you don't have a CD, it might be really hard to hold the aggro. Currently, generating threats feels like a bit harder in Shadowlands for all tanks. Next is Protection Paladin. With the return of Holy Power is more like building and spending resources gameplay. Word of Glory is back and it doesn't have a cooldown and spent on Holy Power instead. Lastly, Hammer of Wrath is here, which serves as an execute ability. The change on Shield of Righteous provides more uptime on mitigation and makes this pack more viable. Plus, the interaction with the legendary, it can deal huge amounts of damage right now, but it might get nerfed in the future, or probably it's already happened. However, the mitigation from the Shield of Righteous is not enough for the most part of the gameplay. You will still take a bunch of damage if you don't use other defensive CD. In terms of Covenant abilities, In my opinion, the Kyrian is the clear winner here, especially in Mythic Plus, and due to its cooldown, it can be useful in single target damage as well. It is not that super strong, but in my opinion, it is better than the other Covenants. There are two legendaries that are performing really well on beta currently. One of them is the Bulwark of the Righteous Fury, because it makes the Shield of the Righteous deal incredible damage. The other one is Holy Avenger's Engraved Sigil, which makes your Avenger's Shield proc more often. Basically, DPS wise, Bulwark of the Righteous Fury is better. However, with the extra procs of Sigil, you can now interrupt a lot more in Mythic Plus, which makes you take less damage. Overall, both acts as defensive and offensive cooldown at the same time. Prot Paladin is really fun to play at the moment, and it deals the highest damage amongst the tanks due to the legendary interaction. However, the spec lacks in damage mitigation better a bit as compared to Prot Warrior. It is more onto your decision to choose between healing yourself or activating your mitigation due to the holy power, which requires a lot more proper planning. Next one is Vengeance Demon Hunter. Spells like Foul Devastation is baseline and behaving as Fury Spender, and Demonic is added to the talent tree instead of Gluttony being removed. Demon Spikes is buff currently gives 75% of your agility as armor as compared before this, which is 60%. Demonic Talent is a great change since it removes the RNG, and you will know exactly when you are going to get the Metamorphosis, and also the armor value increased. With Demon Spikes, it will help the DH to mitigate damage smoother. However, as I have mentioned before this, for other tanks, generating threats is a problem in Shadowlands, and Vengeance is having hard time here as well. With the current toolkit in BFA, since the class is totally rely on corruption for AoE threat generation, it seems like Spirit Bomb talents is going to be needed in dungeons to fix this threat issue. Utility wise, Demon Hunters have Chaos Brands, which increases the spell damage for the group. With the talent Sigil of Chains, they can gather a pack of enemies in one location for delaying the mobs from hitting on you. They have AoE stun, and mobility of the class is really good. When it comes to Covenant's abilities, in my opinion, Venthyr ability will be my pick since it provides both magic and physical damage mitigation, including dealing damage. Activating Metamorphosis will apply to all nearby enemies, which is great. Metamorphosis coming from the Demonic talents doesn't proc Sinful Brand. Considering all the legendaries, I think Vanguard's got the most suitable type from all tanks that are specifically made for Vengeance. However, my pick will be the Dark Glare boon, which basically gives you a 20% chance of getting a free Metamorphosis from Foul Devastation. And I think this is a great value for both Mythic Plus and Raiding. This one is also available for Havoc Demon Hunters as well. Overall, playing Vengeance is really fun because of now you have more in control of your abilities damage output of the specs. However, it might be a problem in the endgame content or higher levels of Mythic Plus, since you will need to change stats, talents, items to more defensive options instead of superior damage, which will reduce your threat generation, but we will see how it will play out in the Shadowlands. The final spec that we would like to discuss is Brewmaster Monk. Spinning Crane Kick and Touch of Death are now available for Brewmasters, and also Celestial Brew is added as a new defensive, and Invoke of Nuzao is on baseline as well. It can provide some damage and survivability, so the addition of Celestial Brew is fabulous, which works as an absorbed shield. And Purifying Brew increases the amounts of shield depending on the cleared amount of stagger up to 200% on a 30 seconds cooldown. This is simply amazing. Spinning Crane Kick will boost the AoE capability of this pack. Another big change is the removal of Iron Skin Brew. Instead, now you have a buff called Shuffle, which you receive by simply doing your normal rotation. And I think this is a pretty good change since you don't have to press a button to get that effect, which is naturally built into your rotation. Utility-wise, monks are pretty solid with the Ring of Peace spell is great for force movements or pushback effects towards mobs. They bring increased physical damage with mystical touch and have an AoE stun. Overall mobility of the class is pretty good when it comes to Covenant's abilities. It seems like most of the abilities are good. However, there are two main options. For the first one is Kyrian ability, which increases your mastery, providing both offensive and defensive value. Second one is Bone Dust Brew, and this one having a lot more defensive, especially in Mythic Plus. In my opinion, I will probably go with the Weapons of Order, but if you are planning to push higher keys, Bone Dust Brew might come in handy. The legendary Storm Stout Lost Keg seems to be the most powerful and useful among all. It really affects your rotation and makes it a lot more smoother, which also provides a good boost to your overall DPS. As conclusion for Monk is looking amazing. New spell like Shuffle added into the rotation makes this spec is more fluid on its way. Alright guys, like I have mentioned at the beginning of this video, the recommendation or pickup time based on groups in my humble opinion is in the mind mapping shown right now. Again, as a disclaimer, the video content here now is based on beta testing. Tuning and rework still underway. Hopefully we can get a very solid result before the release of Shadowlands. As usual folks, to end my story, it is just my personal overview which may be right or wrong. If you have any ideas, concern, opinion, anything to add up, feel free to drop under the comments box down below to discuss. Appreciate for your full support. Thank you everyone for watching and see you again in the next video. Take care, stay safe and have a wonderful day.